All right, we are getting ready to go live. And welcome everyone. I'm Marcy Cleveland with Hudson Valley Green Homes, and today we are doing a virtual lunch and learn with Rick Alfandre of Alfandre Architecture in New Paltz, New York, and we're going to be talking about building a greenhouse, what it is from concept to completion. So I'm just going to let Rick say a few words about his background. Go ahead, Rick.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Great production. I'm the president of Alfandre Architecture as well as Eco Builders. Our office is in New Paltz, and it's in a LEED Platinum zero energy building that we designed and built, own and operate. And we've been in business over 29 years. We're a smallish firm, and we do a lot of different projects throughout the Hudson Valley, and look forward to meeting you.
Excellent. Okay, well, so we're going to pretty much jump right into this presentation because we have a lot of material that we'd like to cover. And I think the very first thing is we need to define what exactly is a greenhouse. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm actually getting an error message from Facebook saying that they're having trouble playing this video. So if anybody that's watching, if you could just comment whether or not you can see us, that would be helpful. All right, that is a first. I've been doing this for a couple of times now and have not seen that message before.
Well, so it's going to be recorded, so you can hopefully post it to Facebook.
Absolutely.
So
okay, so there's our first slide.
Well, so thanks for assembling the slides. It's really much appreciated. It's a great production, and our focus is really on health and well-being. The green building movement, really kind of started in the 70s. After the Arab oil embargo and a lot of concern about the environment, and started with some pioneers with passive solar housing and a lot of focus on energy and energy savings, and trying to utilize what at that time was called alternative energy, which now is obviously very commonplace, solar and wind. And energy conservation, but in the process of exploring those avenues of being sustainable, people also discovered that our indoor environments have the potential to be very unhealthy. And so there's a synchronicity between our built environment, our health, the health of our neighborhoods, our communities, and our planet. So it's a multifaceted, multidimensional conversation about health and well-being, and energy savings is a piece of it. Materials and water conservation and indoor air quality and the indoor environmental quality and things of that nature. So we're focused on, when we're talking about building homes, we're talking about designing and building or renovating homes so that they are healthy and energy efficient, with the use of as few or no toxic materials as possible inside and or outside a building.
Great. Now, you've already mentioned some of the advantages of a green home, so that's our next slide. We can go through this list. Just aside here, Rick, we got some folks that chimed in and said that they can still see and hear us. So
all right,
we're on track.
Great.
Right, so here we go. And that actually is one of your projects on this slide, isn't it?
Yep. That's a house in Warwick. The owner is a well-known author. She's a wonderful person and very, very concerned about the environment. That's a Energy Star rated home. very energy efficient, very comfortable, light filled. It's designed specifically for the site, so you can see that the house captures the sun. Its face has deep overhangs on the south side. It's bringing in lots of early morning light on the east. There's a small pond to the east, so there's some views down to the pond and then out into the woods. And in this case, the roof, you know, it's a simple house with simple shape. The gable south-facing roof has a lot of PV and solar hot water panels as well.
Excellent. All right.
So
I don't know if you wanted to talk about any of the other advantages that are listed there, but I think you've hit on a lot of them.
well, it really is a combination or a synthesis of all of these elements and perhaps others. The others being designing a building that's specific to its place and really thinking about what we call the site forces of a place. So residential design in this climate, where we try to organize a house or a building that, when we're talking about residential, where we can actually capture the sun in the winter and exclude it in the summer as much as possible, so thereby warming the house, but also giving people a sense of connection to the natural forces of the earth and of the universe. So by organizing a house in this way, in other words, say the living rooms and the bedrooms are facing south, and the entrances and the utility rooms and things of that are on the north side, if possible, then you have a direct connection. You, the occupant, have a direct connection to the natural environment. You see the sunrise, you see the sunset, you see the moon rise, you see the moon set. And it can't be done in every location, and there's sometimes there are overriding factors, but the idea is to look at the context as much as possible and try and couple the design of the building with those natural forces. And that leads to better sustainability, but it's also integrated with the environment, the natural environment.
Great. Let's take a look next at some of the different types of green homes that people may be familiar with. Let's start with passive house versus passive solar design. And this is one that I kind of get confused about a little bit.
Yep.
From what I understand, passive house incorporates some of the passive solar design elements, but it's more focused on indoor air quality. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
Well, yes, and I didn't take the training, but I've done a lot of trainings and study, and I'm part of the Passive House Alliance. Passive solar design is where, again, where we would orient the house with a large apertures towards the south. And you can see in the picture on the right that there's the roof is shading that glass in the summer, but it's allowing winter sunlight to come in. So it warms the house, and it's minimizing the glass on the north and east and west. And again, it's supposed to have a good enclosure. All of the walls, roof, foundation, windows, doors, properly insulated and air sealed. Passive House is a European program, and it goes very deep into the details of design, particularly in this climate. Again, it's very well built enclosure, thermally, no thermal bridging, meaning no opportunity for energy to pass through the enclosure with metal or wood. Very, very airtight construction, a great deal of concern and focus on moisture management throughout the entire enclosure, and then utilizing mechanical air or energy exchange system to to provide proper ventilation throughout the building. So the passive house principles we've been following for a very long time. It's great enclosure, as airtight and thermally well built as possible, and then you ventilate correctly. You don't want ventilation or air leakage to just randomly come through parts of the building.
I've heard that passive houses are very healthy homes.
It is, but I mean, it is. You don't have to have a passive house certified building to have a very healthy home, but it is a very rigorous standard, and has very, very, very low air leakage and very, very low energy use.
Great. Now let's go to this one, because as I was doing some research in preparation for this interview, I was like, okay, there's net zero ready, there's net zero energy. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's all this net zero stuff. And I had to actually find this chart to help me understand it.
Yeah.
These are some buzzwords we're hearing a lot right now. Yep.
Well, so just to back up, right, a passive house could be net zero energy ready, but you don't have to be passive house. A passive house could be net zero energy, but you don't have to be passive house. When you read this, net zero carbon, what that means is that you're generating more energy on site than you're using on site, but you're still allowed to use fossil fuel for heating potentially. Zero carbon is where your heating uses no fossil fuels whatsoever. So that would be typically nowadays it's either air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps, geothermal. And then with the zero carbon and grid interactive, so there's some forms of storage, and there's a dynamic relationship between the buildings and the electric grid. And there are iterations and a lot of details in any of these, but the point ultimately is you still have to make a very energy efficient building enclosure, and then utilize very energy efficient lighting and mechanical equipment, plug loads, to try and drive the energy use in the building way down. With net zero energy ready, what that means is that the building is ready for solar, but you didn't install the solar to offset the energy use. And what happens is, as you design a building, you would engage with a home energy rater or a passive house rater or a lead rater, and they will do an energy model of the house and determine how it's going to perform, and they may even make suggestions about things that need to be tweaked, and they will also do inspections during construction. All of these, it's really important to understand that energy alone is not the only thing. We've got to have healthy indoor environments.
Right. All right, so we're going to actually go on to the next slide and just look at
great slides.
I know other quote unquote green homes.
Yep.
Consider is being sustainable.
Yeah. Well, we haven't done a shipping container project, although we had a conversation with somebody recently. I've seen a small office building that was made. The shipping containers apparently have a short lifespan that can only go across the ocean a couple of times. They're inexpensive to purchase. They're very heavy duty steel. Insulating them looks to be, to me, kind of a challenge. You're definitely going to be using foam insulation. I just don't see how we could do it with wood fiber products. But it's certainly an interesting thing to consider. The Earthship is more of a, as I understand it, and we had a conversation with someone in Socrates a couple years ago, it's really also a place where they can grow food and they can live sustainably, not just in terms of energy, but also trying to capture as much rainwater for reuse as well, and also grow food. The modular universe is evolving, but it's been difficult to access really great modular manufacturers in this region who can step up their game beyond energy code. That said, there are panelized building manufacturers, Benson Wood and New Energy Works, who provide, among others, who can provide some really great wall and roof assemblies that are high performance, that are pre-engineered, pre-manufactured, shipped to the site, ready to be assembled, and can be assembled to achieve, very low air leakage, passive house type ratings, and work towards a zero energy, low carbon footprint. That said, they're not necessarily less expensive. They may be better, it might be faster, and they may have unique features, but they're not necessarily less expensive to build than, say, a site constructed building. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. So the tiny home, I think it's really more of a question of whether one has a small footprint. And what you can see when you look at this one is sure, it's a small footprint. It's something maybe they can trailer to a site, but honestly, this one is on a trailer, obviously, so the bottom has to be properly insulated and air sealed as well. You still have to have utilities, and most people, unfortunately, and I'm as guilty, maybe more than others. Most people don't live a monk's lifestyle, so they've got stuff. So I often wonder if someone has a little tiny house somewhere, if they also have a big storage shed, storage unit somewhere as well. I'm just being, a little sarcastic, but it's a nice idea. And I think if one can trim down one's needs, there's a way that it could be done. I could see having communities where, in a village setting where you have infrastructure, where you could have small homes for people who really only need a very small footprint. And I think that would be wonderful. Unfortunately, that's not me, but I can imagine it. I've got tools and gardens and pets and artwork, I think.
All right, so let's look at some possibly sustainable construction techniques.
Yep.
Look up green home, in Google might give you back some of these. Yep.
So cob and cordwood are somewhat similar. Typically built with wood, and that's really great in terms of you're actually storing carbon in the walls usually. Actually, I worked on a cordwood house many years ago, helped with some plans for that house. The issues are water and moisture management. They certainly could be parged with proper stuccos. You still need to really look at the other elements of a house, proper ventilation, moisture and water management, all the things that we would look at in most buildings in this climate. Straw bale, I haven't done any. I have a friend who has a beautiful straw bale home in New Paltz that they built. It's a timber frame house, and the walls are all straw bale outside of the timber frame. So and it's beautifully stuccoed inside and out. It was well crafted. It's lasting a long time. It's very energy efficient. I believe they have a radiant heat system in the house. It does take good craft to be done well, and again, water and moisture management are keys to be sure that and that's true with any structure, really. It's not just any of these natural materials, It's any building, any type, any one that you see. Water and moisture management is the big thing that either sustains a building or kills a building. It's either healthy in an indoor environment or not. Rammed earth, I don't know if there's any in this climate that are built. I've seen some great workshops. I've attended some great workshops where people have done rammed earth or mix of rammed earth and cement and not wood fiber, but agricultural fiber. They look really interesting. I could imagine that in the right climate, they would make a lot of sense. And depending on the thickness and how how it's modeled, it may make a lot of sense. I'm suspecting that in this climate where it's quite cold in the winter, and also we have a lot of moisture variations, that rammed earth buildings would be a real challenge. I don't know, but I think they probably would be, even if we had the proper soils for it.
Okay. Rammed earth is described kind of as a sandcastle house. Is that correct? I hear that they get left for a long time.
Yeah, they're using, as I understand it, they're using primarily soils that have a high clay content, and they're packing it densely in forms as it goes. You can see in that picture the layering of the form work as it goes up. It's more in the Adobe Southwest indigenous culture language than it is in the Northeast indigenous language.
Great. All right, so we're going to move on to green home certifications. What are they and why?
Yay.
Okay, you already mentioned LEED. So let's just talk about the different types if someone were building a green home. How they could get the home certified. Why would they want to get it certified? Does it cost more? Does it take longer? All of those things wrapped up.
Well, it doesn't really take longer if you're doing a good project to begin with. The design and construction process is long. The reasons for a certification are that you're holding the entire team accountable in ways that you wouldn't without the certification. And it can get complicated, but basically, usually there's a design process, and there's a bidding and a building process, and there's building inspectors, and there's maybe the architect or architects and engineers who do some level of inspection, unless they also build the buildings like we built some. That was a blatant pitch. But when you go for a certification, there's a third party reviewer and inspector who holds the entire team accountable. So the Energy Star certification, the DOE Zero Energy Ready, it requires a third party verifier. They do plan reviews, they do inspections, they do testing. Similarly with LEED for homes, similarly with Passive House. I'm not sure how the Living Building Challenge works with respect to the reviewers. The only living buildings that I know about are larger, like the building at the Omega Institute. But I'm sure that there has to be third party verification that it's essentially commissioning the building through the design and construction process to make sure that it exceeds the requirements of the standard. Now, Energy Star is particularly related to energy efficiency. The EPA Indoor Air Plus also addresses air quality issues, and typically when you do Energy Star, you would do EPA Air Plus anyway. LEED for homes is all of that plus site selection, site design, landscape potentially design, materials choices, things of that nature that are also related to being green and sustainable. The passive house, again, is much more focused on energy and indoor air quality, moisture management issues. I've not done any National Green Building Standard. I'm an advocate of LEED. I've been a LEED accredited professional for 18 years, and when the National Home Builders came out with this standard, it was in reaction to LEED for homes, and it feels to me like it's a bit watered down. They probably wouldn't like it that I'm saying that, but I just don't think it's as rigorous a standard as LEED by any stretch. So if one was to start out, I would say go for Energy Star and EPA Indoor Air Plus, and then from there, it's not a big leap to LEED for homes. It's a bigger leap in terms of the tightness of the building and construction sophistication for passive house, and passive house will have some limitations on building design that LEED for homes might not. So in any case, they're all really great because they make for a better project. And I think that as long as you're investing in a home for a reasonable number of years, it's not a short-term investment. Investing big, investing long is probably a wise thing to do. You're going to save a lot of energy, and you're going to be much happier in the end.
And also, everyone, from a real estate perspective, once you get ready to sell this home, if you have a certified home, it's a great piece of paper to say, hey, I really do have an energy efficient home, because a lot of energy upgrades and all these wonderful things that go into homes are behind the walls. And if you have a piece of paper that says that it is what it is, that's all the better.
Well, also on the financing side, the Lakeshore house that we showed you, we had gone through the home energy rating process in terms of the design review, and there was an energy model. And so they went out for financing. The owners went for financing. They took the plans. They took our cost estimate. That's this one. They took the plans. They took our cost estimate. They went to the lender. The lender, of course, hires an appraiser, and the appraiser came back with a low estimate based upon comps. And we said, well, wait a minute. Here's the report from the home energy rater, and it detailed how the building was going to save energy and the costs over time. And the appraisal was revised $50,000 up. So they were able to borrow the money that they needed. So without that process, it was going to be harder. They were going to either have to scramble to take money out of savings, or I don't know what they were going to do, but they were much happier. And that was a direct result of the Energy Star and Indoor Air Plus design review and energy modeling process.
Absolutely. So that's this project. And I know you had another one that was a certified project.
Yep. Yeah, this one is, this one's in Garrison. This is, it's a unique house on top of the mountain. Was built for really an elderly couple, and the exclusive of the pool energy, the swimming pool energy, the entire building was what's called a HERS 12, which means a HERS 0 is zero energy and 100 is standard code. So this was, ultra energy efficient building enclosure, primarily pre-engineered, pre-manufactured. very high performance windows, high efficiency air conditioning and heating, and great ventilation. Now they were going to have the swimming pool regardless, so the swimming pool has its own energy demands. But the building itself was ultra energy efficient. Fortunately at the time, Energy Star allowed us to exclude the swimming pool equipment energy piece. Now there's an automatic cover and there's a dehumidification system, and doing this enclosure is a unique project onto its own because of moisture drive in this climate. That's another conversation. You could do a whole lecture on that.
I have a question for you regarding both of these projects. Now, obviously, these were new construction homes.
Yep.
Would somebody with an existing home be able to get an EPA Energy
Yep.
Star certification or even a LEED? Is that possible?
If it's a substantial renovation, definitely Energy Star. We did a house in New Paltz that could have gotten that. We didn't pursue it, but in that case, it was, substantial, not entirely. It got rehab as well as redoing the siding, extra insulation on the outside, air sealing, new mechanicals, with an addition on the house, and then a garage with PV on it. So it could have been done. It's hard to do if it's not a substantial renovation. In terms of LEED, I don't know. Maybe. I haven't explored that. I would guess there might be a way to do that, depending on the nature of it. LEED is very focused on location as well. So buildings that are in urban and village environments will get points for being connected to the community, and rural locations don't get those points just by what LEED, as LEED evolves, it's focused more on supporting community connectivity and reducing our use of the automobile. Of course, we're all going to struggle with that with COVID, but it's really supporting village and city living more than just energy on a house in the middle of, the American dream location.
All right, I'm going to actually stop the screen share
Great.
here for a minute, and we're gonna dive into now the process. So
All right.
say I'm working with some buyers. They've been looking for an energy efficient home that's out there on the market, can't find it.
Right.
And they come to me and they say, you know what, we've just decided this would just be easier if we just build something from the ground up. So
Yep.
I bring them to you and I say, okay, Rick, have at it. What are we looking at?
Right. Well, we need to know what you want and who you are. So we ask people to really give us a lot of information about themselves, and not like, what do you do for a living and how many kids you have, but what is it that you really like and what is it that you envision that you want to have in your home. And that can be done in a lot of ways. Nowadays, it's a lot easier with Pinterest and Houzz. People can create profiles and tag things and indicate what it is that they like about a particular house or a particular element of a house. I like that window patterning, or I like this kitchen, or I like that plan, or whatever. So we need what we call a program, or it's a wish list, but it needs to be more than that. And everybody's different. Some people are very detail oriented and they can give us a bullet list a mile long. Other people are more talk in more of a narrative form, so they can create a story. Whatever it is, we need to know who you are and what you like. And then, of course, what you need and what you want and what your budget likely will be, so that we can help formulate, a design that fits you. And then we take all of those elements along with the place, the piece of property, and the forces of that place, whether it's the sun, the views, vehicular access, privacy, topography, trees, rock, stones, and create a design that melds those, your needs, your wishes with that particular place.
Now, do you guys have like a Sears catalog of green homes that people can pick from, or can they come in with their own ideas on a napkin, or maybe something they've seen online?
We don't have a catalog, although if one looks at our website, you can see a lot of the homes. We're happy to share the designs, and we will, as part of that program process, anything that you cut and paste from the web is fine. That shows a plan ideas that you like. There really is there. We've done a couple of homes where we've taken a plan that we previously designed and kind of modified it for a new site, and that we can do. But each site and each owner is unique. We may have, like the Lakeshore house has a view to the lake. You might have a different kind of organization and orientation. You might like that plan, or you might even like that style, but it may need to be modified for you. In fact, we're looking at adding a lower level to that design with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom for a sloped site, and maybe turning the sunroom into a screen porch, things of that nature. Yes, it could be done. So until we know really who you are and what you like and the place that you're going to build, it's hard to say whether we have something that would really fit that. And then also, our knowledge and technology is evolving literally every week. So we're updating how we build regularly. It's not a stagnant universe by any means.
If somebody doesn't already have a piece of land that they want to build on, is that something that you can help with the realtor in the search of that?
Sure. Yep. We have and we do. Now, in fact, it's easier now more than ever with Google and parcel viewers and whatever data that comes with a listing. So we can do a lot of stuff virtually and then help people narrow down their choices. We've also recommended that folks add, if they're really serious about a piece of property or a house, that they add a condition, clear title, obviously their ability to finance, but also a satisfactory report from their architect that the house or the property will meet their needs. Now, some sellers may not agree to that, but if you give it a short window of 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks that might also coincide with the other due diligence that you're doing anyway, they may be okay with that. I'm a little concerned for buyers that going after COVID, that sellers may feel, it's a seller's market. I really don't know how it's going to go in the Hudson Valley, but it's worth potentially adding that as a offering condition. Regardless, we can probably do the research pretty quickly anyway. My concern is that people are going to really want to jump and make an offer and get something agreed to before sorting through all the issues. So, a lot of it, again, could be done remotely. Like, let's look at it online and see what is it adjacent to, what's it near, what's the topography, are there wetlands, what's the soils types. A lot of that's available online.
Great. How long do you tell people to expect for the design process?
6 months to a year
Okay.
is realistic. Yep. Depending on the nature of the building and how quickly people can make decisions. Usually the schedule is driven by the owner, not us. But we want people to, if you're designing particularly if you're designing a home, we want you to be able to try it on for size, you know, to really visualize what it's going to feel like when you build it, and to really understand what it is that you're buying, because it's a big, expensive, long-term investment. You don't want to be unhappy with some of the choices. And they are complicated buildings. It's not, you know, that's why a lot of people buy what's already built, because they can't make choices or they can't imagine the choices, so they buy what's built. Or there's some developments where there are model homes and you go and you can pick one of these 3 or 4 things, and or, you know, at different price points. But for the most part, it's a potentially complicated process that we try and help walk you through, and not feel rushed, but feel happy about doing it.
So you're looking at a half a year to a year for the design process, and then the construction period is going to take how long?
9 months.
Okay.
Yep. Now that house in Garrison with the swimming pool, that was 1.5 years from inception of design to move in. But you know, they wanted it fast, and they trusted us, and they were fully engaged, and they had plenty of money to spend. But if that wasn't the case, it probably would have been a 2-year process.
Wow. What's the longest a house has ever taken you from start to finish?
3 years. Yeah. Yeah, we've taken 2 years to design a house for somebody, but that's, again, that was their, you know, over analyzing things.
So now here's the $1 million question.
Yes.
Does a green home cost more than a traditional home?
Well, what's a traditional home?
A conventional home, one that you could go down the street and there's a subdivision being built and you're buying that new construction home.
Yeah, well, yes, it probably does. But the energy code is coming along and is requiring buildings to be more energy efficient than they used to be. The dilemma with most I don't want to trash anybody, but the dilemma with many builder designed and builder built homes is that they're missing a lot of pieces with respect to sustainability and energy efficiency. Now they're better than they were, and they're getting good, but there's still a lot of pieces. To have a Energy Star rated home is a minuscule fraction more to build than to build to a code minimum, in my opinion. To have a passive house home, it's going to be significantly more money, most likely. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on what it is that you want. On the other hand, you know, we're trying to frame the conversation. So what's important, you know, is your comfort and your long-term financial stability, because you've saved a lot of energy over time. Your health and well-being, is that, you know, more important to you than, say, particular finishes or a particular aesthetic? Fancy moldings, granite countertops, for, you know, and I'm not saying don't do those, but if you had to make some choices about where to spend money, which would you rather spend it on? And I think that it's important for people to understand that if you have a limited budget, which most people do, the vast majority of people do, then it's probably better to invest in your long-term health and energy savings first, and then maybe later, if you need to, you can change the kitchen. You know, you can upgrade the kitchen, you can upgrade bathrooms, but very difficult to fix water and moisture problems.
I hear from people that own these type of homes what an amazing distinguishable difference there is in this type of home versus a conventional home.
Yep.
And it's not until you get into it and you start living in it that you realize
Yep.
all of the advantages. And I've often thought that wouldn't it be great if a builder or an architect such as yourself had an Airbnb where people could come and spend a couple of nights
Mm-hmm.
in a green home just to experience what it's like, because a lot of us, we just don't know.
Right.
And,
Right.
And it's
Right.
it's about education, and it's about that experience to really understand the difference.
It is about experience. It's, how do you feel thermally? How does the air smell? How noisy is it or not noisy? And you don't really know that you're cold, let's say, until you're cold. If you're in a room where all of the walls are cold, it takes a lot of heat to make you feel warm. But if you're in a building where the walls don't get cold, then you feel more comfortable. You're more productive. You're complaining less. You're producing more. You have fewer colds and discomfort, as an example. So,
right.
Yeah.
And people have to realize that just because the price tag of creating a home like this is more upfront, consider the long run. You
Right.
might not have to go to the doctor as much, so you're
Right.
not getting any bills on that.
Yep.
Your energy bills are less, so that $300 that you're saving in energy bills can go towards a larger mortgage.
Yep. And your energy is greater as well. Your physical energy is greater. And that's hard to quantify, and I don't think you can get a loan on it. But in the commercial office and manufacturing space, those productivity enhancement values are showing themselves in the marketplace. So how do we translate that into the residential space? It's a bit tricky.
So you mentioned something about creating and constructing an EPA Energy Star home is minuscule than doing a conventional. So why isn't everyone doing it? I mean, that just seems silly not to just go that little small extra step.
Well, I think part of it is that people think they know better. Sometimes you wonder why people don't talk to a nutritionist, because they think they know everything about food. It's also, there is money that has to be spent, and when a budget is tight, you have to say, well, I'm not sure I want to spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a service that I don't understand. So there's that. Or they don't understand what the value proposition is. If I'm Energy Star, I'm going to save maybe 30% more, but I have to spend this much up front, and the payback is 5 years. Oh my God, that just seems crazy to me. Well, it's actually not. It's a great investment. And then when you factor on the reality of the quality of construction is so much better because of the third-party verification, and your aggravation level as an owner is going to be so much less at the end of the day. But that, it's hard to prove that. It's hard to, it doesn't matter how many testimonials we have to say that that's the case. If somebody doesn't believe it, they don't believe it.
So here's another question for you, kind of along those lines. New York
Yep.
State, we have some pretty big goals in reducing our carbon emissions, and we
Yep.
know building construction and buildings in general, contribute to that. What's going to be our biggest hurdle in being able to meet those goals, do you think, from this industry's perspective?
I think the biggest hurdle actually is our existing building stock. That's a really big challenge. Houses, multifamily, historic buildings. It's expensive to rehab to a really good level where you can now electrify, heat and cool with heat pumps or ground source heat pumps. It's a big investment. So that's probably the biggest piece. The other, when we talk about, so the state's goals are specifically related to energy use. So we can make buildings very low energy use so that they can then be heated and cooled with electrically driven equipment, basically. And then on the grid, we would have solar and wind, and it's and hydro, and it's a happy thing. But it's getting those buildings to a point where they could actually be reasonably comfortable with that kind of equipment, and investing in that equipment. That's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Rick. We have 10 minutes left. I want to go into some of your projects that you've done in the past.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to our slideshow. So just give
Great.
me just a second here to start sharing my screen. All right. This is your favorite project. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, that photo is old, but that's our office building in New Paltz. It is 5,400 square feet of offices. Alfandre Architecture, Vicky Koenig, nutritionist, Joe Marcy, attorney, Jack Zand, attorney, Taft Realty, Malone and McBroom, engineers, and Integral Building and Design, building performance contractors, and home energy raters, green building raters. The building is LEED Platinum. It's actually been, we opened in May of 2014, and we recertified, we was certified LEED Platinum in 2015, and then recertified in 2019. And then at the beginning of this year, we got our LEED Zero Energy and LEED Zero Water. So the building generates more energy than it uses on an annual basis. We have a rainwater harvesting system, so we use way more rainwater than municipal water by a lot. The municipal water is used primarily or almost only for hand washing or in the kitchenette. And the rainwater flushes toilets and irrigates the landscape when needed. So it actually took 10 years from, 8 years from the time we purchased the property to actually build the building. Went through 2 recessions, and the good news is that during that process, we learned a lot about construction that changed the way we thought about things. So the building, the walls are insulated concrete form system. The windows are a passive house type window, not type, they are a passive house window. The roof system was pre-engineered panelized system from Bensonwood in New Hampshire. And then we have about 32 kilowatts of solar. The heating and cooling are air source heat pump system from Carrier Greenspeed. So and then there's a energy recovery ventilator, which brings in extra ventilation. And it's just a great work environment, and it's super quiet right on the road. Even with the insulated concrete form system, it's very, very quiet.
Wow, looks amazing. After the quarantine is lifted, are you offering tours?
Yeah, I think everyone should come. I don't know. I don't think we're going to set up cots for staying overnight, but you could come and check it out and see what it feels like. You can. In fact, I mean, come when it's really hot out, like really hot or really cold, and see what it's like indoors. You'll be very impressed.
All right, so we're gonna look at this next slide. This
Yep.
was your most challenging project, and why so?
Well, lots of reasons. This is the Emerson Resort in Mount Tremper. we've worked for the owners since pretty much the inception of the projects there in the 90s. And this particular building is actually a marriage of 4 buildings. On the very far right was the original Risley barn, which Dean Gitter had turned into a retail center back in the 90s. And then next to that, he built a restaurant. And then next to that was the old Risley house. When the first Emerson, which we designed, it opened in 2000 and burned down in 2005, possibly due to arson, which was across the street. Dean and our team came up with the idea of building the new hotel on this side of Route 28, or just above and to the left. You can see the Sopus Creek. On the left side of the building are all of the guest rooms, and so the whole construction married the 3 buildings that were already there. They were not connected. We connected all of them. There's unbelievably complicated angles, different heights. There's a beautiful great room. There's a great restaurant now, and called Wood Notes, and then there's a spa, great spa, exercise facility, and then 24, I think it's 24 guest rooms. And they're all kind of unique. Dean sold his interest to his partner, Emily Fisher, some years ago, and then we did a substantial renovation as well. And you can just see from the aerial how complex the building is, and that was by design, but also by necessity. And just so in that respect, the amount of thinking that goes into something like this, it's hard to describe.
And don't forget the giant kaleidoscope is there.
Yeah, well, that was in and of itself a unique thing. Now that was whenever that was in the 90s. That was under there used to be a different building code, but the building inspector, at the time, the building wasn't sprinklered. It is now. But at the time, the building inspector said, well, you can't have a building, you can't have a 3-story building that's not sprinklered, or what, I don't remember what it was. And somehow I explained to him through the code that even though it was 50 feet tall, that it was still only a 1-story building. Now it's concrete, it's not going to burn anyway, but he granted the building permit so that they could have the kaleidoscope. It was something like that.
All right, well, thank you, Rick. I want to make sure that we get to this last slide, which is how folks contact you.
Yep.
This is Rick's firm and how to contact him. And these are all the organizations down here that y'all are involved in.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great slide right there.
So I want to thank you so much for taking part in this interview, and we appreciate your knowledge and everything that you had to say.
Thank you. It's a great time. Thanks for the production. It's very well done.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And next week on Tuesday, I hope everyone comes in to the Lunch and Learn. It's going to be a lot about electric vehicles, and we're going to have the Green Living guy on, and it should be a fun panel discussion. So please join us next Tuesday. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you then. Thank you.